Okay, everybody, absolutely gigantic news out of Tesla land. Tesla is officially starting robotaxi rides in Austin, drives in Austin, Texas, with no safety monitor in the car. As you can see here, there is a person in the back of the robotaxi, and there's nobody in the front seat. The videos that we were getting before about these robotaxis without a driver in them, driving around Austin, were from the Tesla accounts where the people like Elon and Ashok, who leads the AI team at Tesla, that were testing the vehicle. But now this is the first instance of a car that doesn't have a safety rider or a safety driver, is actually taking people around in a city while the person is paying Tesla to get that service. So that marks a gigantic sort of threshold for the company. And I'm going to explain to you why that is. So if you're not familiar with the technology that Tesla has been working on, Tesla has had FSD in their vehicles for a few years now. FSD is basically the software that allows cars to drive themselves while you have to pay attention. But since June of last year in 2025, right, we're in 2026 now, it feels like a lot longer than that, Tesla has had this growing fleet of robotaxi cars where they're testing their existing fleet of vehicles driving around without anybody in them as a robotaxi, as a fully fledged autonomous vehicle. This is exactly like how Waymo is approaching self-driving technology. I'm sure you've heard of Waymo. They're expanding very rapidly, but Waymo is all over the country right now in the United States. And Waymo uses a very sensor-heavy approach to do self-driving. They use LiDAR, they use radar, they use cameras, they use ultrasonics, and they map every city. Where Tesla differs tremendously is that Tesla is using just 8 cameras, actually 9 cameras, literally the same cameras that are in your phone, plus an AI computer in the car that has been training on years of driver data from Tesla's existing fleet of vehicles in the country and the world driving around. And now that car has learned how to drive itself to the point that we're now seeing these vehicles literally driving themselves without anybody in the car. And the huge point I want to drive here is that this car is no different than the car you can buy from Tesla right now. So if you go to tesla.com and then you just buy Model Y, which is what this vehicle is, you're just going to get this car that's capable of this technology. The only big difference is that Tesla has enough data now, enough safety data to say, okay, we want to have a number of vehicles in our fleet without a safety driver or rider in them, taking people from point A to point B, but they haven't yet made that public yet for the entire fleet of vehicles for all the Tesla owners out there to experience. And so based on the guidance that we got from the company, Ashok, who leads AI for Tesla, he said that there's going to be a handful, actually pull up the post. So based on the guidance from Ashok, robotaxi rides without any safety monitors are now publicly available in Austin, starting with a few unsupervised vehicles mixed in with the broader robotaxi fleet with safety monitors, and the ratio will increase over time. And so as of this recording, Tesla has about 30-ish robotaxis in Austin. They have well over 100 in the Bay Area. I believe between the two combined, they have roughly 230-ish robotaxis driving around. A huge majority of them have safety drivers or riders in the vehicle, either in the driver's seat or the passenger seat. But now Tesla's starting to trickle in vehicles without any safety riders or drivers in them, again, because they have enough data to prove that this is safe to do. And Tesla is in a very unique position because they have to be very careful how they roll this out, because the amount of news coverage they would get if something were to go wrong without anybody in the car is vastly larger than if something happens with Waymo. We've had occurrences of Waymos, crashing into potholes and crashing into sort of work areas and going into, these giant holes in the road. And I think one hit a fire truck. But of course, the technology is far safer than a human when it comes to deaths and injuries, but they're still making mistakes. Not to say Tesla won't make mistakes, but you probably haven't heard of that, right? Whereas if Tesla encounters the same exact thing, you're going to hear about that. You will hear about that. It will be front page news in whatever outlet you watch, because Tesla and Elon Musk are much bigger news stories than little old Waymo, who that's owned by Google, as good of a job that they're doing. So there's a fascinating time in the history of Tesla right now. And so what's probably going to happen here in the coming weeks and months, if you're a Tesla investor and you're really interested in this, so what's going to end up happening is Tesla's going to add more and more vehicles to their fleets in Austin and the Bay Area without anybody in the cars, so no drivers or riders. That's obviously a huge deal, because what that's going to enable Tesla to do is to actually start making a lot of money on these robotaxis. The biggest part of the equation of a taxi, just any taxi, is the driver. And so if you have a robotaxi with somebody in the car, your costs are no different than if it was an Uber driver or a taxi driver. But once you remove that driver from the equation, the cost of the robotaxi drops to just the cost of the energy that it requires to drive the robotaxi, which is electric, which is much less than gas. And then basically the maintenance and repairs of the system, which are far lower than a gas car and an electric car like a Tesla robotaxi, because it doesn't have a radiator, it doesn't have an engine, it doesn't have transmission, it doesn't have all those moving parts. And so the cost per mile of something like a Model Y without a person in the car is much closer to, say, 40 to 60 cents per mile versus a human-driven car, which is upwards of $2. So there's a gigantic reduction in price when it comes to the robotaxi. And so what that's going to allow Tesla to do long-term is to have pricing for their taxi network, which is much lower than, say, an Uber or a human-driven taxi. And so as the technology gets better, as the technology gets safer, with these software updates that Tesla is going to keep pushing to the cars to make the cars safer and better drivers, it's going to not only allow Tesla to keep the costs low, but it's going to allow these cars to be everywhere precisely because of the type of technology that Tesla has employed for these vehicles. Those same cameras that the cars have and the AI brain that's in the vehicle, the reason that's why such a huge deal is because the approach that Tesla has taken by collecting everyone's driving data, all the existing drivers, is that if they can do unsupervised in Austin, they can do unsupervised in Bay Area because they have all the data from the Bay Area people driving around. But they can also do unsupervised in Houston, in New York, in Miami, in London, in Germany, right? In Berlin, in Australia, in places in China, if China allows them to actually, release this technology. That is Tesla's very unique positioning, is that not only do they have a car that's very cheap to produce, so this Model Y that I've been showing you costs about $30,000 to build per car, and they've built over 1 million of them per year for the last 3 years. So not just that, but the technology is going to allow them to operate anywhere in the world. So they have a gigantic scale advantage, and they also have a gigantic cost advantage. And so what we should see, as long as the safety data is good from the company and these robotaxis, again, Tesla's probably going to be very slow with the rollout, and regulation will also get in the way in a lot of different places where they'd want to be extra safe, or maybe they just don't want the technology in those cities. What it's going to allow Tesla to do is to go really, really, really fast in theory. And the company's planning for this by having their Cybercab vehicle. So Cybercab is this sort of two-door, beautiful little vehicle here that is optimized for this future. So it doesn't have a steering wheel and pedal. And then depending on how quickly they can get the safety level up, and then how quickly regulators catch up with Tesla with their ability, Tesla should be able to build 2 million units of these per year or more, and then flood the world with not just Model Ys and Model 3s, but Cybercabs as well. And so all of a sudden, let's say you fast forward 2 to 3 years, Tesla's going to go from only having, let's say, only having a 2 million unit capacity per year to over 5 million unit capacity per year. And so that means millions, tens of millions of self-driving Teslas on the road by 2030 that are going to drive themselves anywhere without anybody in the car for a fraction of the price of any other taxi out there. That's a humongous deal. There's another point that we just got yesterday. I'm actually going to create a separate video about this because we need to dedicate an entire video to this dynamic that was just announced. Is that we officially have the first insurer outside of Tesla, a company called Lemonade. By the way, I'm an investor in both Tesla and Lemonade. So do your due diligence after you listen to this video. Don't just take everything I say as gospel, because I am biased. I think I'm right, but I am biased, not financial investment advice. U.S. insurer Lemonade has announced that it will offer a 50% rate cut for drivers of Tesla vehicles when FSD is steering because it had data showing it reduced accidents. I'm going to explain to you very shortly why that's such a gigantic signal. A car that sees 360 degrees, never gets drowsy, and reacts in milliseconds can't be compared to a human. Beyond the product announcement today, we're also announcing our commitment to the Tesla community. The safer FSD software becomes, the more our prices will drop, said Shai Winninger, co-founder and president at Lemonade. Which, by the way, Shai should join me here for a podcast at some point in the future. We're working on something in the background, so stay tuned for that. So the reason why that's such a huge deal, and let me show you Elon's response to that too, because it's sort of, talks about this. Insurance is half price when Tesla FSD is activated because it increases safety so much. So now you have a third-party company. So this is not Tesla that's saying, hey, we've reduced the insurance prices by half. You have a third-party insurance company in Lemonade that has studied Tesla's data when it comes to self-driving technology. And a third-party company has said, if you use FSD in your vehicle, we are willing to insure that vehicle for 50% off. A third party. So why is that big? Lemonade doesn't stand to gain any money from lying about this, right? They don't stand, if they're wrong about this, they go bankrupt. Why do they go bankrupt? Because if they're charging half the price for insurance, but it turns out that FSD is just as unsafe as a human or worse, they're going to have to pay out claims that are much higher than the money that they're collecting from the customers, and then they just go out of business. So the reason why Lemonade is doing this is, number one, because they're confident they can make money, and number two, they're confident that customers will actually purchase their insurance because it's at half price. And what it says on the flip side of it is that if a third-party company is willing to give such a huge discount versus everybody else in the field, including Tesla doesn't even offer that kind of pricing for their own FSD usage. If that third party is saying, yes, we're confident we can make money with that pricing, it implies that Tesla FSD is literally twice as good as a car without FSD from a safety perspective. What I want you to think through here is, if every Tesla was on FSD in the world, and let's just actually use the United States as an example, not even the world, but let's make it easier. 40,000 deaths in the United States per year from auto accidents. If every car was a Tesla, what Lemonade is saying is that because they're charging a 50% rate versus the full price, they're giving you a 50% discount, that implies that deaths would be cut in half, right? Because you would have half the accident rates. And so Lemonade is literally telling the market that if the entire world was in Teslas running on FSD, instead of 40,000 deaths per year, we would have 20,000 deaths per year. That's a gigantic signal, not just for Lemonade, but also for Tesla, that their system is extremely safe. And that system is not just in Robotaxi, it's for every owner of a Tesla vehicle. Okay? This is why that's such a big deal. And so now we have this coalescing sort of set of information, data points, whatever you want to call it, that is starting to paint a very clear story. Tesla is confident that they've solved unsupervised self-driving. Tesla is confident they have the safety level to execute on that technology by not having anybody in the car supervising the system. There's a third-party company that agrees with them. They have massive scale and increasing at millions of cars per year. And they have an AI system that can basically do this anywhere in the world as long as it has the data. Okay? That is a ginormous moat, not financial investment advice. That's a ginormous moat for Tesla that's become very obvious. And for people that don't believe that, I just implore you to just get yourself into a car with the latest version of FSD V14, or go to Austin, or go to the Bay Area and just hail a Robotaxi. Literally anybody in the world can download the Robotaxi app right now and go to Austin, go to Bay Area if you have the opportunity to do that. If you are a doubter in this, just get yourself in the car and experience it for yourself, and then come back and say, okay, there's problems here, okay? It, of course, is not going to be perfect, but there's a third party that literally says that the safety level of FSD is twice as good as a human's, so much so that they're willing to put their money where their mouth is, because if they get it wrong, they go bankrupt. Huge deal, you guys, huge deal. I have a dedicated video coming out about this partnership. I have a dedicated video coming out about the sort of merging of Tesla, SpaceX, XAI, all these things. I have a lot of it in my pipeline. The last few months has been absolutely insane when it comes to following this stuff. If you really want to follow this stuff really closely, you're as passionate about it, as I'm sure you can tell I am, freaking losing my mind here. I had a little bit of caffeine, but I'm actually so excited about all of this. Subscribe to the channel. Like the video, and then if you want to join my exclusive community, farzad.fm, I'll have a link for that in the description below, in the comment section below. Join us. We have exclusive community talks every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Central. We have a private Discord. I have research and articles that I only have for my members, and it's going to keep growing into this gigantic thing. I have a lot of plans, actually. I have a lot of stuff. As they say, the kids are saying, I'm cooking, y'all. Farzad, never say that again. Okay, I'm going to let you go. Bye. Love you. See ya.